Hi there. If you haven't been on the website convome.com lately, I just want to give you a quick update. I'm doing something new for Etsy sellers as an alternative to being on the podcast. It's really for Etsy sellers who want to promote their Etsy shops but don't necessarily want to be on the podcast. And it's called Etsy Shop Shoutout. Basically, it's a sponsored post with lots of heavy social media promotion and some other stuff. And to get more details about it, please go to convome.com/shoutout. That's convome.com/shoutout, one word, for more details and to sign up for your own Etsy shop shoutout. And now, on to the show.
Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama. Thank you for joining me for another Etsy conversation. And my guest this week is Brooke. Brooke runs the Etsy shop, Sucre shop, and she opened her shop on January 6th of 2009. To date, she has 8,929 sales and 1,489 5-star reviews, and her shop has 9,334 admirers. I think Brooke is going to have a lot to share with us. So Brooke, hi, and thank you so much for being my guest.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Yeah, we live in St. Louis. It's my husband, my 2 little kids, and me. And I have just always been an avid crafter. I did open the Etsy shop in 2009, and way back in the day, I was selling like applique onesies and other things of my own creation. I really maybe only sold 3 things before about 3 years ago when I started printing on wooden utensils. And the shop is, it's called Sucre Shop, SucreShop. And we do a lot of hand-printed wooden utensils, and also now we've expanded to do other party and giftware. So now this is my life. This is me.
So you started off selling applique onesies?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, I have little kids, so I went from bookbinding to sewing, lots of different textiles, and just kind of crafting. I always say that the reason why I started in the first place stamping on wooden utensils was just because I had all of these supplies in my craft room, and when you can get really creative is when you can look what's around you and create something new with it. So that's how that happened.
Oh, nice. Well, did you always have the same shop name, or did you change over the years?
I did change it.
Okay.
It's sort of one of the things that nobody ever tells you is that when you start a blog and when you open an Etsy shop and when you start a website, it's really smart to pick one thing that you like, so that you can be consistent. It used to be Sucre and Spice, which is the name of my personal craft blog. Yeah, so it just changed it a little bit.
Okay. Now, was transitioning from one product line to another hard for you, or was it just an easy transition?
You mean in the early days?
Well, when you switched from the onesies to now.
Yeah. Well, no, that was really just crafting. I mean, it was, me making things for fun, and then I would put a few on Etsy. So it wasn't that was all I did. That was just kind of one of my many, crafts at the time. So
okay.
I never really considered myself to have any kind of business at all until I started doing this.
Okay. So are the bulk of the sales that you've had in this current Etsy shop of your hand-printed wooden utensils?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I started doing that in 2011. So there may be, a few sales here and there before that, but starting in the spring of 2011 is when most of those sales have come through. And yeah, I would say on Etsy, our most popular items are still the hand-printed wooden utensils, and we do a lot of personalizing and customizing with different messages and colors, designs, and things like that.
Okay. What do you think was so different that did you find that there was just more of an interest in your hand-printed wooden utensils, and that's why the shop just really took off?
Yeah, nobody. So when I started making those, it was just an idea that I had. It wasn't a thing yet. I mean, I think that now a lot of people who are familiar with crafts or Etsy or sort of party world are very familiar with printed wooden utensils, but nobody made them before me. I was
nice.
the first person to make them, so it was a new design. It was a whole new product that I developed within this party genre, which was really taking off at the time. So, I mean, I often say it was just kind of being at the right place at the right time. But, you know, this is a product that I really invented and developed. And, you know, it was exciting. It was really great because I always loved making things and I always thought it would be fun to sell on Etsy, but it wasn't really until I started doing this that things started happening.
Oh, excellent. So now you opened initially, as it was just for fun. When did you decide you wanted to make this a business?
Well, you know, I tell people often that it was kind of a funny transition because I have a business now. There is no question that I have a business, but I didn't even necessarily start making the wooden utensils to have a business. It was something that I was doing for fun, and if I got a few sales on Etsy here and there, I thought that was great. But there did get to a point where I got really busy, and I spent a long time just trying to keep up with the demand. So I think that maybe it turns into a business at the point where you try to get one step ahead of that, and you're not just trying to keep up, but you're trying to develop a business and to take it further, and where you try to make the next moves and the next steps.
Wow. That's excellent. And your shop has really grown now. You don't just sell just from your shop, but you're also part of Etsy Wholesale.
Correct.
Okay, great. So I want us to talk about that because we've never up until now really gone in depth on the podcast about Etsy Wholesale. So for everyone or anyone who has heard it be mentioned here, can you explain, first of all, what is Etsy Wholesale?
Yeah. Etsy Wholesale is a platform that Etsy devised where people can apply. It is juried, I understand. So you can apply to sell on Etsy Wholesale. And what that means is that if your application is approved, you can set up a store with your products that other stores, other boutiques, or whoever is approved to buy can shop your items. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Now, are these third-party shops like off of Etsy that can buy from you or other Etsy sellers?
Not other Etsy sellers. Other Etsy sellers are not, they're not allowed to carry other Etsy store items in their own shops.
Yeah.
But, any, like the boutiques in your town, the stores in your town, and really, I mean, I say boutiques because there are so many of them across this country and there's such wonderful stores that are looking for handmade items, but it's not really just those boutiques that are looking for handmade items anymore. There are a lot of larger stores that have partnerships with Etsy Wholesale, like West Elm and Nordstrom, and we have actually gotten to participate in both of those programs where Nordstrom and West Elm have purchased from us through Etsy Wholesale, and we've been carried in Nordstrom stores and West Elm.
Wow. So when you're part of Etsy Wholesale, these boutiques and sometimes department stores have access to what you're making, and then they can approach you directly and commission you to create a line exclusively for them. Is that right?
It can be exclusive. It doesn't have to be. Let me take a step back if you don't mind and just okay. So because I was selling wholesale before Etsy Wholesale, so I think it might be easier if I just kind of quickly go through
that would be great.
and how that works for anybody who doesn't know. But basically, once I thought that I could manage it and take on a little more work, a few people had emailed me to say that they would like to carry my products in their stores. So the first question, is what is the pricing and that kind of thing. So basically, Etsy wholesale does let you decide your pricing. Wholesale price is usually or can be half of what your retail price is. Okay. So I always like to suggest to people when they are pricing their items for retail, you also want to consider that if you ever decide to get bigger and sell wholesale, will you be comfortable selling your items at half of that price to stores?
Okay.
So instead of, to me, the really cool thing about Etsy wholesale is that it brings stores to you. Mm-hmm. I go to trade shows. I pay a whole lot of money to go to trade shows and to put my items in front of a lot of shoppers, those shoppers being store owners. But Etsy wholesale allows sellers a way to not have to participate in those trade shows. It's essentially a mall for stores where instead of doing their own research and finding out, now what would I like to be in my store, they can instead just go to Etsy wholesale and look through the different items and see if anything appeals to them. So it is a very, I think it's an awesome thing that Etsy has done to be able to put handmade and handcrafted items into the hands of stores that otherwise would never have found them.
Right. And so then once a store finds you, they contact you directly and then you set up an agreement with them as to what you're going to provide for them and all whatnot.
Yeah, well, this is another really neat thing about Etsy wholesale is that they have the system set up where those buyers can shop from you directly online. You can, when you're setting up your Etsy wholesale store, the items that you're selling wholesale, they call it a line sheet when you're looking at those items. Mm-hmm. And basically stores will look at your line sheet or the items that you offer, and they can just add them to their shopping cart and check out. It is really, really easy because it reduces the amount of work that I have to do as a store owner. Yeah, I mean, it's super cool. When somebody emails me about wholesale, not through Etsy, there's a whole lot of back and forth, and then I have to make my own invoice once they've made their selections. Yeah. And this just eliminates a whole lot of paperwork. I mean, if you think about it, they already have the information for the store and the taxes. Those stores have already been approved. So you don't have to worry about asking them to fill out a wholesale application.
Right.
It is. Good. Yeah.
And once you form a relationship with the shop, with another shop, is it considered a permanent relationship, or can they just make a one-time order and you can continue to provide to other shops?
Yes. Well, hopefully they'll do more than a one-time order.
Yes.
But, the only contract, there isn't really so much of a contract. It's basically like, anybody shopping from you on Etsy, except that for a store, they would have a minimum order. For example, $250. They would basically have to purchase $250 worth of your products, to enable them to have that wholesale price.
Okay.
So there really isn't any contract about whether they have to order again. Mm-hmm. If they just want to order once and the items don't do well for them, that's their prerogative. But it is a nice way to, establish a relationship.
Yeah. Now, do they pay for everything they buy up front, or do they put a down payment and then give you the rest upon delivery?
Etsy does allow you to create your own terms of sale.
Okay.
So there is, I think, a place where you can mark when you would like to be paid. It is common for handmade items to be purchased before they're created and shipped. So I think that's probably the norm on Etsy. Some of the larger accounts that I deal with, like Anthropology or something like that, they don't pay up front, but it's pretty common for that to happen on Etsy.
And I ask that because I would imagine for a lot of people who make their products by hand, sometimes you need some capital upfront to source your raw materials before you, especially when you're fulfilling a large wholesale order.
Yeah, you do. I think that you're absolutely right. It's always nice to have that money up front. That way you can buy your supplies.
Right, right. Now, Etsy wholesale is a juried system, right? Not everyone who applies will be accepted.
That's right.
Do you have any advice for sellers who are considering applying? Any advice that would help them make themselves look more appealing to the jury that's making the decision?
Yeah, well, I mean, think about it this way. Etsy wants to put together a really nice wholesale program so that stores want to buy from them. So basically, Etsy just wants your store to look good. You know, I mean, I think, and I mean, again, you know, I'm not a spokesperson for Etsy. I don't know if I really know the answer to this, but I have heard people who work from Etsy say, of course, having great, clear pictures with good images, having really good descriptions. People like a story. I think that people shop on Etsy for stories a lot.
Yes.
So once you get, that kind of thing hashed out, where you have your prices appropriately marked and your pictures are great and your descriptions are great, you know, I think that that's helpful. I don't exactly know what their criteria is, but I have heard that is up there on their list.
Okay. And that makes perfect sense too, because I would imagine that they would want, the shops that are representing them to look good, for starters.
Yep.
Now, so with all what you're doing, do you do Etsy? Well, I shouldn't say Etsy, because you're doing more than Etsy. But is this what you do full time?
Yes.
Okay. and
well, I mean, it's a funny question. Yes, I don't have another job, but you know, I have kids in PTO and as full time as I can.
Yeah. Okay. And now because you have a lot going on, not only do you have the Etsy shop and you're doing Etsy wholesale, you also have a website, which is an e-commerce website, and that's sucreshop.com. I will have links to Brooke's website in the show notes and in the blog post, so you can go over there and click directly to her shop. But it's an e-commerce website, and people can buy directly from there as well. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And do you do anything else on that website, or it's strictly for sales?
Well, that website, you know, I think that website has a few different functions for us. We do also have sales on there, retail sales like we do on Etsy. We do also have wholesale orders that come through there. We have links to our social media and links to our blog. And we also have on the bottom of that site an email sign up list so that people can get a newsletter that we send out occasionally.
Okay.
And a contact form too. It's, it does serve a lot of functions for us too. I refer people a lot to a page on our website that lists the stores where our products are available if somebody would rather shop locally.
Okay. I see. And then now you say we, and I know you're saying we because you have a whole team that works with you. And when I say a whole team, I don't mean like an army, but you have a team of people that work with you. Can you tell us about your team?
Yeah. So this is, you know, and again, this was all by trial and error. I did not set out here to have a business, but this is just what works for us. So right now, we just always call ourselves the crew, the Sucre Shop crew, in our studio. It's me, and then Lily is in charge of wholesale. She's really the production manager. She makes sure that those orders get together properly and get sent out on time, ready for shipping. Brittany handles Etsy. She answers the convos and creates those custom orders.
Okay.
I have Lindsay, who is a graphic designer, and she helps with designs for the utensils, our other products, and other things that we might need for the blog or trade shows.
Okay.
And then also Karen does the shipping for us. And we actually had just one person leave. We have ranged everywhere from this is the smallest we've been for a while. We were up to about 12 people in this spring where we had some big orders. But but right now, we're a fairly core group.
Wow. So let's talk about your hiring process. How do you go about finding the right people to recruit to your team?
It is not super easy. I mean, I don't know anybody who thinks that hiring good people is easy. I do think, I hope at least at this point that I have a little bit of an advantage because we have also a social media presence in St. Louis, so that if I'm looking for somebody, my first step is not just to go to, Craigslist and try and find somebody, though I do usually post on Craigslist because there's wonderful creative people who look there. Yeah. But I do use, my social media to try and, find somebody, because really, to me, the best kind of person is going to be somebody who knows and really understands what we do and what we're trying to do here. Yeah. So if somebody is already aware of Sucre Shop, then to me, that's a bonus.
Oh, nice. So how do you manage your time? You laugh.
Yeah. Well, isn't this like, the biggest joke of all, that you can achieve balance?
Yes.
What do you mean? What's my role or function now within the company? Or
yes, yeah. So since some of the administrative type things are delegated out, how do you spend your time? Where's your main focus?
Yeah. Well, actually, I really still do many of the administrative things. Brittany does handle the conversations that come in through Etsy, okay. But we do also have conversations coming in through the website. I might just list a few things and ramble off here. Mm-hmm. I do our ordering. I do our product development. I do our social media. I do our kind of outreach, I guess, whenever I want to work with somebody else, or I'm hoping to, develop another relationship. That's me. I also work on getting new orders, wholesale usually.
Okay.
And then when those orders come in, the invoicing goes through me first.
Okay. Now, one thing I forgot to ask, not forgot, but I guess we jumped right into the conversation. You joined Etsy in 2009. Did you know about it before you decided you wanted to start selling on there?
Oh my gosh, that was so long ago. I don't really remember. 2009. So my daughter was 1. I probably joined because I wanted to buy things initially, I would say.
Okay.
My son was 2, my daughter was 1. Yeah.
And in that time, between then and now, have you had any negative experiences?
Well, sure. Etsy's not perfect.
How did you handle those?
Well, I guess it depends what it is. I mean, when you do something for a while, you're bound to have negative experiences. I've had bad things kind of happen with people buying from me. I've had not wonderful things happen with what I would consider Etsy administration. But if you, how do I handle them? I don't know. You just keep plugging and you do the best you can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, it seems that that's what you've done because you're still there. So that's good.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty general question, but I guess one way I can answer that is that among the bugs with Etsy or some of the problems, and Etsy knows that this is a problem, is that, there's an option to report somebody else on their website for not selling something that's handmade, or, it says something like this item may not be allowed by Etsy's rules. Mm-hmm. There was this situation, it was actually right before I had my first big magazine feature coming out. My shop was shut down by Etsy.
No way.
On a misunderstanding. Yeah. I mean, I initially had a lot of things like the printed utensils on there. And then I was also had one listing with plain wooden utensils on there. And at this point, 3 or 4 years later, there are maybe like 100, 200. I have no idea how many shops who have wooden utensils in them. But when I started, there wasn't anybody else who did. And so I didn't know if there was a rule about it or not. But apparently it was an Etsy rule. They did not consider a plain wooden utensil a supply. And they shut down my shop, which is one reason why I started the other e-commerce website. Cause I thought, what am I going to do?
Oh, nice. Oh, okay, good. I like this story only because it demonstrates, the importance of not having all your eggs in one basket.
Absolutely.
So you were right on the cusp of getting an order and then your shop gets shut down. How did you end up fulfilling the order? Did it fall through? Did you end up losing because of that?
Well, so it wasn't actually an order that I was expecting to receive. I was hoping to receive a lot of orders. This was 1 year after I had opened, and I had been asked by Martha Stewart Living to send in some samples for consideration for a May magazine. And that May magazine was about to come out any day, and I had been told by the editors at Martha Stewart that my spoons were going to be in there. So, and they had linked back to my Etsy shop. So basically, I was looking at being in a major magazine for the first time and having, this really great opportunity. And then people were going to go to my Etsy shop and it was going to get one of those, messages. Yes. We all know those messages. Yes. Because it was going to be shut down. So, this was like an absolute freak out moment for me. And it was honestly just a misunderstanding, but I think that happens on Etsy. We were shut down by Etsy another time too, because somebody had reported that something I was selling was not my design, but it was. Etsy doesn't necessarily ask you questions first. They just, do what they think they need to do.
Yeah. And so, how hard was it to pursue the issue and then get reopened?
Well, it was not incredibly easy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody knows that Etsy doesn't have a 1-800 number you can call up when you have a problem. You basically have to send an email to their, whatever their help center is. At this point, I know people there. I've worked with them enough and visited people. And it is nice, I think, once you've had enough experiences with them to actually have emails addressed and know people there in case you have problems. But at that point, I didn't have anybody really to help me or who knew what the situation was or how much I was freaking out about it.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So, I think it was right over the 4th of July, I remember. But it got worked out. I think it reopened, a day and a half later. Somebody responded to my email and reopened it.
Okay. That's not so bad.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about promotions. Now you've gotten, press in some big, like you mentioned, Martha Stewart Living. You've also been featured in HGTV magazine and Oprah magazine and the Food Network magazine. How do you do it? How do you get their attention?
Well, first of all, I think that just being on Etsy puts you on the scope of editors at major magazines. Because a lot of these magazines are looking for handmade and they're looking for something new. And it's sort of en vogue, which is great for us. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I get emails, through my email, asking for samples for a magazine, but very, very often I get emails through Etsy from editors who are looking on Etsy and they're interested in listing Etsy stores in their magazines. So I think you have a big advantage, just being on Etsy for starters and looking out for those emails. But another way that I do it, when I was in Oprah magazine, well, I had sort of an onslaught this last summer of pretty awesome magazine features. We were on the cover of the O List in Oprah magazine, and we were in Martha Stewart Living again, and we were in People magazine again, and that happened because I went to my first trade show last year in January. Mm-hmm. I went to, it's called NY Now. It's the gift show in New York City, at the Javits Convention Center. And
oh yeah, I've been there.
It is, it's so cool. Like if you have the opportunity to ever walk around there, you will find so much inspiration, so many neat products, so many things that you never knew existed. And they're just, brilliant and like beautiful displays. The artistic side of me looks at how people set up their booths and how they set up their displays and is just amazed. But it is it's quite pricey to go and display in that show. It's a pretty big expense, but for me, it was a gamble I thought I was ready to take. So I, saved up and got a booth in the handmade section at the International Gift Show last year in January, and it ended up being a pretty good gamble. I got a lot of interest from the press there. So many magazine editors come and they take pictures of your booth, and it's so exciting.
Wow.
But you never know. It's so cool, but you never know what's going to come of it. So, a lot of people take pictures, but to actually end up in those magazines was just amazing.
Do they tell you before they publish your picture in the magazine that you will be featured?
They do, yeah,
Okay.
Because what happens is you exchange business cards and, you follow up with them and see if you can send them anything if they're interested in anything. And then they'll write back and let you know which items they are interested in. And they usually request that we send those items so that they can do their own photography and or style it if they're using it in a photo shoot.
And
so
do you find that from being in those magazines, can you correlate sales to the exposure that you get in those?
not always, but sometimes for sure. We've had small features in amazing magazines that I would say, were not any better than a great feature we had in a blog. It's exciting, of course, to be in a magazine. It's exciting to see it, and it's like, it's kind of cool for your social media and for your, I don't know, for your ego, you work hard and to see something.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah. Now I'm looking at the press page on the Sucre Shop website. And again, links to this, to the Sucre Shop website will be in the blog post. The covers of the magazines, those are the editions that you showed up in?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It's probably not updated. I don't remember. We try and keep it pretty good, but we're usually a few months behind. But I was going to say that the one feature that we had like a marked difference in was Oprah. When we were, it was the cover of the O List in June of last year. The whole page was just our wooden forks and spoons, and
nice.
It was just beautiful, and it was so amazing. So yeah, that was it. That was a very busy month for us. But then the funny thing is that then the month is over and the magazine is not on the stands anymore. Right. And then it's like, oh
wow. So it really just lasts for as long as that edition is fresh.
Well, I mean, I kind of joke it lives on in doctors' offices and nail salons.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, but otherwise, you just kind of have to hope that there's going to be another feature and something else.
Yeah. Wow. I guess the Oprah touch still works. I don't know if you've ever heard how, sometimes people say, oh, if you want to sell something, just, let Oprah say she likes it. And then, people will buy it because Oprah likes it. So.
Yeah, totally.
Now, other than this vendor show that you did last January, how do you pick other vendor shows, or do you just select like one big major one you're going to do for the year?
So I did 3 last year.
Okay.
And there are 2, there's a lot of these, there's a lot of trade shows in the United States. I mean, there's New York, there's Atlanta, there's Seattle and Las Vegas, and I know there's one in Texas. I mean, there's the Rocky Mountain gift show. There's the Denver gift show. There's a whole lot of them. I was told that the major ones are New York and Atlanta, and I went to New York. There's like a winter and a summer. So there's 2 of them a year in each of those places. And some people do the whole circuit. People go to all of these shows, and I go to these shows myself. That's another thing that I do here personally in this business, is that I go to these shows myself. I prepare for them, set up for them, and then man them. And it is 7 or 8 days, and it's a long time to be away from my family. Yeah. And, I love it and I hate it. It's kind of neat, but at this point, I have another one at the end of next week that I'm going to. So I'm in like major prep mode now, but I will not go to 3 shows again this year. That was way too much for me and would burn me out pretty quickly if I kept up at that pace. So, I think you just have to figure out what works for you. And I'm still figuring that out, but definitely not more than 2.
And do you strictly only do vendor shows? You don't do any craft fairs?
Well, to be honest, I don't have that much success at craft shows. It's funny because it's actually a little bit of like an ego deflator. I'm like, no, seriously, people like me. I want you to buy some.
Like, Oprah liked me. How can you not?
I went to a craft show last year and, sat next to a friend of mine who's so super talented, Michelle Volansky, and she had some great sales at that show, and I was so proud of her. And then I was like, man, people really like her more than they like me. So I don't do craft shows because like everybody else, you have to figure out what is worth your time, and that my sales just, I think I need to be able to present my products to a larger market to find the people who really like them. It apparently doesn't work as well in just a smaller market.
Now, I have a question. Once, and this is kind of going back to our discussion about Etsy wholesale. Once you create those relationships with boutiques and department stores, and you have those contacts in your file, have you ever considered leaving Etsy and just creating a direct relationship with boutiques and department stores on your own and just completely cutting Etsy out of your business plan?
I don't think Etsy would like, truly, well, I was going to say, I don't think Etsy would like that very much.
Oh, yeah. No. Let me just say this. I'm not suggesting that you do.
Right. No, of course. To be honest, if anything, I've actually considered going the other way and doing all of my wholesale through Etsy because I just enjoy the way that the transactions there work. It makes it so easy for me, to get orders there. And I don't know that I'm actually, going to do that either, but I think that, the relationship is yours, even though the transaction takes place on Etsy. Okay, let's say this. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but if you have, basically Etsy wants you to, if Etsy is introducing you to somebody, then they want you to do business with that person on Etsy. Like you couldn't,
Yes.
in your Etsy store, right? You couldn't say to this person, well, why don't you just PayPal me the money or something?
Right, yeah.
Like
Come meet me at the back. Right.
Yeah, because of course Etsy wants to have that commission, which they deserve.
Yes.
For setting up that relationship. So, yeah, but Etsy wholesale is new. And the thing is that for a long time, I would get emails on Etsy before Etsy wholesale existed for people saying, do you sell wholesale? And I would say, sure, email me, Brooke at Sucre Shop.
Okay.
And I don't think that Etsy minded that because, there was no place for it there, on Etsy to have that wholesale thing happen.
Right.
But now that there is, I really don't have any desire to take those relationships away from Etsy. That's the short answer. Sorry.
For people who are considering doing wholesale, do you think that doing it through Etsy wholesale affords you some additional level of security?
Absolutely.
Than going directly to, than doing it directly with the vendor? Yeah,
absolutely. It does. I don't know that they have any kind of promises, like PayPal about if something doesn't work, they reimburse you. It isn't anything like that. But just like, to join Etsy wholesale is juried. Etsy receives applications from different stores who are looking to purchase through it. And, I'm pretty sure that Etsy does their due diligence in checking out the stores and making sure that they're legit.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. That's not, to be taken lightly.
Yeah. And this is a personal preference, but I get kind of lazy. So I think I would like the security of knowing that the vendors have been vetted, and then the vendors having that security of knowing that if I were on Etsy wholesale, had been vetted, and then, it's just easier to do business, or less stressful, I would imagine.
It's true. I agree with you. I think that it's great. And if you're lazy or if you just like things to run efficiently, whatever the reason, it's great. Now, one reason that I do need to have my own wholesale is, off of Etsy, is that we do wholesale some products which are not allowed to be sold on Etsy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
When you get an idea for a new product, typically how long does it take you to go from the idea to executing it to having it ready for sale?
Well, I'm pretty impatient. If you ask me how long I wanted it to take, it would be like a matter of days. But truly, like that's one of the neat things about having a studio and having people here and supplies here and things is that we do a lot of things by hand and we do the design here. And often we can actually test things out really, really quickly. If you're talking about our utensils, something like that, it could be an hour or a day before I'm able to see the results of an idea I have.
Okay.
So it depends, I guess, how much outsourcing I would have to do for that idea.
Okay. Now, when you came back on Etsy, not came back, but when you started your new line and you decided to approach it differently and as a business, what things specifically would you say that you did to set yourself up to be successful?
I think that you have to have the people in the right places. To me, answering conversations and getting things out quickly was never something that I could consider compromising. Mm-hmm. I have followed in the past some Etsy shops like on Instagram, and every once in a while I'll see a note, we're running 5 weeks ship time, and if we're not answering your questions, it's because we're too busy. And I don't know. I don't think that Etsy is about that. Mm-hmm. I'm there because I want to talk to people and I want to make things for people. And I don't know, maybe it's because I order things last minute also when I think that I need it right away. But, we ship within a day or two. And I think just setting up things that you don't want to compromise. Maybe it's personal, for them that's not important. But to me, it is important.
Yeah. Are there any features that you would like to see Etsy add to the website for sellers?
Oh, yeah.
Like what?
So we have noticed that when we put in some different variations, you're able to adjust things like quantity or size. For example, I can sell a set of utensils, let's say it's $10, or I can sell it in twice the quantity for $20, all on the same page. However, there's not an option to adjust shipping for that. Whereas on my website, if you're going to adjust the quantity, then the shipping automatically adjusts itself.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah. Another thing is that, there's all this stuff with rush shipping and everything going on. And I really wish that Etsy would just have a function. I think it's coming, but just have a function for letting people select how quickly they would like their items shipped.
Oh, right. Yeah. Cause I know some other online marketplaces have that feature.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's
two good
common.
ones. Okay, now
and not like that. But wait, I have one other thing.
Oh my goodness. If the Etsy folks are listening to this, they're going to be like, my goodness, Brooke wants us to add so many new features. Other people just say one thing. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm going to New York. Maybe we need to have coffee at Etsy. So, the other thing, we, because I have employees and because we, try to function like a business, I don't want my employees to work on the weekends. I mean, they're home and they're not, it's not, if it were just me, I wouldn't mind answering convos on the weekends. Yeah. But I don't want Brittany to have to do that. That's her time off. So I do wish that there was a function that could say, when somebody sends a convo that we'll answer their question quickly on Monday. Because sometimes if somebody is writing Friday night or Saturday or Sunday, they feel like they're waiting a long time to get a response because a lot of people on Etsy do answer on the weekends.
Yeah.
But the only way to adjust your convos, I think, is to put it on vacation mode, which isn't really what we need.
Yeah. So
vacation mode closes your store.
So what would you like a weekend mode or an after hours?
I think so. I think a weekend mode.
Huh. Okay. I'm thinking about it because I'm like, that's not a bad idea actually. And I think people would understand that because especially if you're doing it full time.
Yeah, I thought it was a big deal when we stopped answering convos on the weekend. I was really afraid of the business that we would lose from it. And I'm sure that we do lose business because Etsy is a competitive marketplace and,
yeah,
I can make something better than somebody else. But if I'm not available to talk to them about it, then, somebody else might just go.
Right. Swoop in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say, maybe you could put that in your profile or your about page, but we know not everyone reads everything. So still probably would go unnoticed.
Yeah.
Now, so you've been selling for a while. I want to ask you to give advice to two different sets of people. First, to veteran sellers. Any advice you have for people who've been selling on Etsy for a while and maybe have not reached the level of success with Etsy that they had hoped for? What would you say to that seller?
I guess I would suggest that they check and make sure that their Etsy store looks good, for one thing.
Okay.
That it looks how they want it to look. I mean, something that I started doing when I started out was I made a pin board of different images, how I liked how things looked, the placement, the lighting, that kind of thing. And then I kind of strive to emulate that.
Okay.
So I use Pinterest, just to kind of figure out what it is that I'm going for. Because I think that the way that you present your store has a whole lot to do with the success that it might have.
Yeah.
Although I have to say that I don't think mine really looked that good when I first started with the wooden utensils. It was really the idea. So you have to also have a good original idea. But then the other thing that I use a whole lot that works for me is social media. I mean, if you're not doing it, then shame on you. It's just a great free resource and way to interact with people, introduce yourself to people. And I think once you put yourself out there, people will respond.
Okay. Now, as far as social media, which of the different social media outlets do you find you personally get the best return on your time investment from?
Instagram, hands down.
Okay.
We are Sucre Shop on Instagram, SucreShop. We connect with businesses that way. We connect with bloggers that way. Lots of fun, just people who like our products, or people whose products I like. It's huge for me to be able to search hashtags and look around and find inspiration.
Yeah.
And I'm I guess a very visual person. I love design, and Instagram is it for me.
Okay. And just so everyone knows, Sucre Shop is on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, and I'll have links to all the social media places that you can find Sucre Shop in the blog post. So you can go there and then click over and see what she's doing.
Thank you.
And then for the new Etsy seller who's maybe feeling discouraged, or maybe not even, who's just kind of excited, is just on there, has just opened up the new Etsy shop, what would you say to that person?
I would say to keep your head down and work hard. And what I mean by that is do not get distracted by the other people who are trying to do what you're trying to do. Do not get yourself into a fit of comparison with other people. My best advice is to try and do what you do the best way you can.
Nice. Now, Brooke, what's something that you're doing right now that's working really well for your business?
Oh, if everybody knew the answer to that for their own business. Right? You spend forever trying to figure out what you do that works.
Yeah. But at this point in time, right now, which it could change tomorrow, but today.
It could change tomorrow. I think that people are really liking our new products, our new designs. I'm really excited that people have responded very well to some of the new things that we've come out with. And, because I go to trade shows now and because I get a lot of press in my booths, you really have to keep expanding your product line and developing new things, or they're not going to put you in another magazine because they've already done it.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of pressure and a constant thing for me to try and come up with new ideas. And I'm really, really happy that people have responded well to the new things we've come up with.
Excellent. Brooke, what's the best way people can reach you if they want to get a hold of you?
Oh, anything. I try to always write back to people. It doesn't matter. There's a contact form on our website. You can write through there, or my email is brooke@sucreshop.com. If you're on Instagram, definitely write to me there. Anything. I'm on all of it.
Okay. So Brooke is very accessible. Thank you so much for being my guest on the podcast. I really enjoyed having you on, and thank you for sharing so much information about Etsy wholesale and trade shows, and just how you've grown and how your shop has blossomed. I think it's really excellent, and there's just some valuable information for people.
Thank you. I hope it was helpful for people. I think that your show is so great. I've learned so much from it. So hopefully this can be one of those shows people will listen to and learn something from also. Thanks,
Brooke. And yeah, not to what's the word? I can't think of the word, but it's having guests like you who are willing to come and share your Etsy story and what you're doing on Etsy that make the show just what it is. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with me.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to.
And I will be back next week. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.